Picture yourself sitting in a comfy chair reading your favorite manga. You're reading an intense battle. The fight choreography is seamlessly flowing from panel to panel, where you can almost imagine it playing out in your head. Then you think to yourself, man, I would love for this to be animated. I can assure you, you aren't the only one that thought that while reading the manga. Today, I'm going to make an anime out of a manga that I really enjoy. Welcome to Anime Season Roadmap, where I take a series that either has an anime coming out, or has no anime at all, and make one season based off the contents in the manga. If you're new here, my name is Yuno, and now you know. If you enjoyed this video at any point, leaving a like will be appreciated. If you like this video, feel free to check out the channel, and if you like what you see, kick back, stay a while, and hit the subscribe button. Now onto the video. This episode is a bit different from the others. Kaiju number 8 and Sakamoto Days are two series that yet have an anime adaptation. We have Kaiju number 8 coming out very soon with theirs, and Sakamoto Days has yet to be announced by the time of this recording. With My Hero, we already have 6 established seasons. The episode count is kind of easy for us here. Season 1 had 13 episodes, whereas the other 5 seasons had 25. I'm gonna kind of go in the middle here and do 20 episodes for this season. Season 7 leads to the current arc that we're in the manga, and that arc has yet to be done. So I'm only going to cover 20 episodes of content. When the arc most likely wraps up, I'll probably cover that as well. Now, let's make the season. Episode 1. This episode will be a recap. My Hero really loves doing recap episodes, and I don't feel like I should break that tradition. But even with the recap, episode 1 of season 6 covered 3 chapters. Chapter 258 to chapter 260. I'm going to apply the same thing here. I'm going to have a recap, and then we're going to cover chapters 329 to 330. This will introduce Stars and Stripe, the beginning of her fight with Shigaraki. I think the perfect place to end this is having Shigaraki seem dead at the beginning and losing control. Perfect cliffhanger. Episode 2. This will cover chapters 331 to 334. This fight can be handled in one episode. The fist bump to the earth could be revealed before the opening. And speaking of opening, I heard who's doing the opening, and yes, we are in great hands. If you had to ask me what type of style we want, I would say something like this song from Mr. Fantastic. Very bright, vibrant, and just like the previous openings, but also epic. Episode 3. This will cover chapter 335. This episode will reveal the traitor of the UA, covering the beginning of the small arc. Looking at these episodes, a lot certainly has happened, and it may feel like the pacing is doing too much, so I feel like we could slow it down with this episode. This is the first time we'll see the students this season, so we should get some time with them before jumping right back into canon. The episode will end with Invisible Girl. Episode 4. This episode will cover chapters 336 to 337. This will be the reveal and the capture of Oyama. After being revealed that he's the traitor, I will slow the pace down a bit here. I feel like the episode should dive deep into scenes where Oyama was being sneaky in front of us throughout all the arcs. And I think getting the class reaction is very important too. Episode 5. This episode will cover 338 to 340. This will close a confrontation with Oyama, showing the students are even more determined to win. The tension will be cut with Mei being shown in the series. Leading into the planning, and Aizawa speaking to Oyama. The perfect ending will be showing Shinso being recruited. Episode 6. This episode will cover chapters 341 to 342. This is a great episode to show the villain sides, which I think is extremely important. I would even like it if we had some filler sprinkled into this episode. Toga's story is extremely important, especially for the future of the series, just as well as Dabi's. Also, the heroes getting ready to make their move. The moment with Deku and Uraraka talking about saving the villains is very important for this episode. Maybe we should switch that to the beginning episodes leading on to the villains. I don't know. Episode 7. This episode will cover chapters 343 to 345. The beginning of the war. I can see chapter 343 being handled within a few minutes, then having the intro play as they face off between the two. After the intro, we have a flashback with the planning stages being shown, Shinso and Monoma being key factors of jump-starting the war. Flashing back into the present with even more of our heroes joining the battle. We'll end the episode with everyone at their own respective battlefields. I can see the episode ending with the scenes being played out along with the outro, instead of having the outro. And then, once the song is over, we see Deku is in the wrong battlefield. Episode 8. This episode will cover chapters 346 to 348 and pages 7 through 8 of chapter 349. We'll start off with the Shigaraki attack force, explaining the proper planning they had to take care of Shigaraki, and how Deku was so important to this plan. Then the evolution of Shigaraki. I can't imagine how Bones will animate this. I'm hoping they get the same team that worked with Mahito's domain expansion. We'll then switch POVs to Deku as he is confronted by Toga. I can see this episode ending with Deku running off to the UA battlefield. Episode 9. This episode will cover pages 9 through 14 of chapter 349, chapter 350, and pages 1 to 3 of 351. The point of view changes to the communal world Ground Zero. We'll show the danger in introducing us to this new form of Dabi. After the intro, we'll get Dabi's backstory. This is an important backstory. I was going to have this episode go up to 352, but I want Dabi's story to take its time, seeing the hatred build up. Having this episode ending with Shoto saying, "I'm the one who will stop you." Episode 10. This episode will cover pages 2 to 14 of chapter 351, chapter 352, and page 1 of 353. The conclusion of the Dabi and Shoto fight. I'm hoping they give us a good amount of emotion and extra scenes in this fight. Ending the episode with Shoto hitting Toya with the Great Glacier Ager and burning, announcing that Dabi is down. Episode 11. This episode will cover chapters 353 and 355. The conclusion of Dabi being defeated will get around the battlefield as we transfer over to each battlefield, changing the POV to Endeavor versus All for One. With Endeavor being taken out by All for One, UA steps up to support Hawks. This episode will end with Hawks cracking open All for One's mask. Episode 12. This episode will cover pages 3 to 6 of chapter 349 and chapters 356 to 357. So I'm starting this episode with Deku flying towards the battlefield, with him talking to the second user and him imploring him to reach the battlefield quickly. We then switch over to Jiro, Tokoyami, and Hawks versus All for One. Endeavor will then hop into the fight. Then we'll have the epic battle between Endeavor versus All for One. The episode will end with All for One reversing the damage, and the first user warning Deku of what is about to take place. And then Deku will see something in the distance. Having the episode start with Deku flying and having the episode end with Deku flying, I think is better pacing than to have them split up in completely different episodes. Episode 13. This episode will cover chapters 358 to 361. We'll switch POVs to Shigaraki's fight with UA. Bakugo will get the most attention in this episode, however, we will finally get some shine of UA's Big Three. I think the fight with the Big Three should be extended to really show how well they all work together. Episode 14. This episode will cover chapter 362. This was a huge moment in this series, and damn near broke the internet when it came out. I'm giving it its own episode since Bakugo is one of the most important characters in the series, extending the fight between him and Shigaraki for a bit. I'll even have him figure out certain things about his quirk awakening. That way we can see foreshadowing into the future. I could also see flashbacks of Bakugo throughout the series being added into this. Maybe even the movies. Ending the episode with Bakugo's death. Episode 15. This episode will cover chapters 363 and 364. This will be quite the episode, leaving off of what happened in the last episode, but things will get even more grim. Shigaraki is on an all-time high, Dabi is back up in action, Skeptic is hacking into the UA, and All for One is back in his prime form. The small glimmer of hope that we have is Edgeshot saying he's going to patch up Bakugo. I want this episode to feel like the Empire Strikes Back. Episode 16. This episode will cover chapters 365 to 366 and pages 5 through 12 of 367. This is the episode needed after the two we just saw. We need to be more hopeful with this episode. One that shows the heroes fighting back. While Bakugo is being treated by Edgeshot, Mirako is just in the fight breaking every part of her body just to keep Shigaraki at bay. Shigaraki then go full Apex mode, cleaning out everyone until Deku comes in. I think the perfect place to end this episode is having Deku see Bakugo's body and him raging at that. Episode 17. This episode will cover pages 1 through 5 and 12 through 17 of chapters 367 and chapters 368 and 369. This episode will start off with the jet fighters finding Deku and then switching the POV back to Rage Deku. I'll add a small little fight of Rage Deku and Shiggy until Mirio hops in and calms Deku down, all before the intro plays. Or maybe not before the intro plays, that might be too much. Then I'll have the big fight with Deku and Shigaraki, introducing Gear Shift. I'll have Deku going crazy fighting, ending this chapter with the beginning of the POV change with Spinner. Episode 18. This will cover chapters 370 to 372. I have my feelings about the Heteromorph encounter being its own arc, however I think this will wrap up quickly. This is the big moment for Shoji, and I'll have this episode end with Present Mike and Spinner calling out for their friend. Episode 19. This episode will cover chapters 373 to 375, pages 2 to 7 of chapter 377, and pages 6 through 8 of 380. This will be another grim episode. The conflict outside of the hospital will end and Kurogiri will awaken. Villains will be teleported to different locations showing the battlefield of each. UA, Okotu Island, Kamino, showing the villains may have the upper hand. This will also show Shigaraki back in action. Episode 20. And for the finale, we will have chapter 376, page 1 and pages 7 through 11 of 377, and chapters 378 to 379. For the season finale, I got all of this. I know it's a lot, but looking at everything, I think this is the perfect finale. We'll start off with page 1 of 367. I think that is the perfect opening. Then we'll have the big moment of Gentle and Lady Nagant joining the battle, having the last scene for this season being Deku and Shigaraki hitting the ground, with Deku ready to take on Shigaraki. Personally, I think this is where it's going to end, but if we get the ending to My Hero Academia faster, I might make a part 2 of this, who knows. But let me know what you guys think. Where do you think this series should end? If you guys want to see more, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification, that way you'll know when it's out. And if you like this video, give it a like. If not, give it a dislike, doesn't really matter to me. If you want to see more of me, catch me out on Twitter, if you know, you know. And until then, you know where to find you know.